So, everyone, I am Councilman Gary Singh for the city of Manteca. I'm also representing Sikh.
Hello, everyone. Today you are watching us at Political Talks, and my name is Simran Kaur. Let me introduce myself a little bit since you've not seen me before. And we have two new hosts today. It's me and Gary. And my name is Simran Kaur, and currently, as you all probably know, I'm a Tracy School Board member. And also, I work as a deputy district attorney in San Joaquin County. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our second host, Gary Singh. And we also, as you can tell, have Susan Eggman with us. So, Gary, do you want to tell us about yourself a little bit?
Sure. Good evening, San Joaquin County. It's great to see you guys all. And instead of having Raj and Gurtej, you get Raj's better half today with Simran.
And, a lot better.
And then I don't know if I'm any better than Gurtej, but at least you got me. So, everyone, I am Councilman Gary Singh for the city of Manteca. I'm also representing Sikhs of Manteca here today. And I am here for representing all of our community, but also we have a great personality here today. And so I might be sweating a little bit here, but we're going to bring her on. And so I want to introduce Susan Talamante Eggman, and we'll give you a little bit of a bio, and we'll let her kind of talk more about herself. But Susan was a native of Turlock and is a former social worker. She was also on the Stockton City Council, and then became our assembly member for District 13. She's actually been elected 3 times, re-elected. And now she's currently running for state senate. So from there, I guess we will let Susan Eggman take it from there and tell us more about herself. Susan,
all right.
You're on.
Well, thank you very much, Gary. And Simran, very nice to see both of you. I feel already like I'm an honor with the elected officials. And so a huge thank to Sikhs of Tracy and Mountain House area and the Sikh community in general for all that you do for San Joaquin County and the leadership that continues to just bubble up from your community. It is recognized and noticed and valued. So Susan Eggman, grew up in Turlock, graduated from Turlock High. I took a little 4 years into the military, and probably there, like a lot of us in our young years, you kind of find a path, and I knew mine was public service. And I also I was a medic, so I fell in love with working in and around hospitals at that time. So my work as a social worker has always been in and around hospitals, dealing with mental health issues and addiction issues. And then I was a professor at Sac State. I ended up getting my PhD and did work up in Portland in the emergency room. So that was exciting. It's always an exciting place for a social worker to be in an emergency room, because you get whatever comes in the door, whether it's a car wreck or a shooting or domestic violence or an overdose. And it's kind of like politics, right? You take whatever comes, and things come at you quickly, and you have to stay calm, and you have to meet everybody where they are. And try to do your very best to support them, and hopefully not always in a time of crisis like they are in an emergency room. But they're just really deep in my sense of service. And so, and then at some point, as a social worker working with healthcare and policy and mental health, at some point you just decide that maybe you need to be at the policy making level and not just at the implementation level. So I ran for Stockton City Council, and I served 2 terms there. I was elected twice, and then ran for the state assembly. So as you know, Gary's a council member. I was a council member of Stockton. And then at the state level, there are assembly members and senators. So every assembly member represents about 500,000 people, which is a lot. So I currently represent up to Thornton, and then all of Stockton, all of Tracy, all of Mountain House, out the Delta, up the top. So for Senate, and there are 80 of us, because there are about 40 million people in the state of California. And so you get 500,000 for 80 assembly members. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people in Los Angeles, so they have a lot of assembly members down there, right? So us up in Northern California, we need to be nimble and quick and make friends and know how to, know how to negotiate.
Fight the good fight.
Fight the good fight. Fight the good fight. What's good about us? We're small, but we're mighty. And then in the Senate, that's about 1 million people you represent. So for me, moving from the Assembly to the Senate, it will be a much bigger area. So it'll be all of San Joaquin County. It'll go up into Sacramento County, taking Galt, and then go down into Stanislaus County, cuts across at about 132 out of Modesto. So for me, I mean, anytime a seat comes open, you have to think, hopefully if you're in elected office, and hopefully more and more women out there, right? Mm-hmm. We shouldn't think, why us? We should think, why not us? And so when it came time to run for this seat, I thought, why not me? Who is better? That I've been working on issues around agriculture and healthcare and mental health care. I grew up in Stanislaus County. I've been representing San Joaquin County. So it just felt like I had a broad knowledge of both the people, the communities, and the issues to be able to then take that knowledge and continue to represent the Tracy and Mountain House area, but include in that more of Stanislaus County and more of San Joaquin County as a whole. So that's a little bit about me, and so I put my hat out there, and I'm running. Hopefully, we'll be successful, and then we'll continue to serve the great communities of Tracy and Mountain House.
Yeah, and thank you so much for telling us about yourself, and and also a little bit of a civic lesson here, like about the Assembly and the State Senate, so we can understand what's the difference and how your role would change from an Assemblywoman to a state senator.
Right, and some people say, like, oh, you're going to take Kamala Harris's place. That's U.S. Senate, right?
That's different.
So
that's different, yeah.
It's 2 U.S. senators, and so those are the people who are in
That's at the federal. Yep, federal different than state.
We have a little more than 2 in the state level.
Yeah.
So I did wanted to. We've been getting a lot of requests from our audience, and and one of the biggest things that everyone wants to talk about, because we're so engrossed in it currently, is COVID, obviously, right? Mm-hmm. And with your experience in healthcare and also in the Assembly, State Assembly, what challenges are you seeing currently for our businesses, our schools, and what policies have you been working on to implement and help our residents? So we would like to know a little bit about that.
Okay. So, like everybody else, when March came and all of a sudden we realized that we had a pandemic on our hands, mm-hmm. So I currently, as your Assembly member, I have 5 staff in the Capitol who work on policy, and we pass bills and make laws. And then I have 4 staff in the district, and they do constituent issues. So we've moved some of our policy staff down because our phones are going, as you might imagine. There are over 6 million Californians who have filed for unemployment. And a lot of them have called our office for help. So my staff has done, they're working 7 days a week, helping people, trying to walk them through unemployment. And I can tell you, I was one of the members who signed on to the letter saying we need a audit of the unemployment department. It is not running as smoothly as it should. We understand they had to hire up and then had to also implement the brand new federal program but we still have to keep our eyes on it to make sure that people are getting served. So we have been working very hard just on constituent issues and talking to people and helping them through the process. And then we've done food drives, we've done mass giveaways, all of that. But I have been trying to be very instrumental in working with the county and the state, negotiating between about getting us as many resources as we can. So we have been active with activating some space on the fairgrounds when the governor brought in some trailers for homeless. We have been very active with helping secure some hotels when we now have spaces for homeless to stay in some hotels who have COVID. And also with farm workers, they're doing some of the same work now. Operation Harvest is going on. So we've done that. The different municipalities, Stockton and Tracy, have also done small business loans. We've helped facilitate that at the state level. And of course, the Federal CARES Act passed. Mm-hmm. We also then work very closely with our agricultural community because we know that was very heavily impacted. And we got the governor to send another 54 million down when we realized our farm workers and our ag workers weren't being cared for as properly as they should have been. The governor also then sent 6 strike teams down to some of our valley communities to help make sure that money was getting out, and we were doing as much cohesive work as possible. So we have been, from my office perspective, I've just been working on it on all fronts, both just, in helping people who are currently struggling, in bringing in more resources. I've done a series of videos also about, just like telling people, especially when it first started the pandemic, trying to educate people and trying to calm people down, right? There's also been mental health issues, and I think we're going to talk about mental health later because I have a lot more I could say about that. But that's kind of some of the broad strokes. I think hopefully the feds are going to pass another stimulus package to be able to get people back to work and help businesses stay open as long as they can. We understand, the impact that it has. And we know we got to follow public health guidelines. I had the occasion to be in another county that's on a different tier, and I was, struck by signs everywhere, mask up, everyone wearing masks. And I come back home and I don't see that same level of adherence, I think, to our best medical advice at this point. And so we are still in the most widespread category. We hope to be able to move up to the red, which is the next one. And we're all going to have to do our part to make sure our businesses can open, because I think that is key, is to get as many things open as we can, as safely as we possibly can. We don't want to jeopardize public health, but we also know that the health of our economy needs to be back on track.
Yeah, and to add on to that, what I would be amiss if I didn't ask this question, because, our California, since I'm on the school board, our schools are devastated with any budget cuts. We're at the bottom out of all 50 states, in the low 40 is our number of how much funding the schools are getting. And I know your office, Ms. Baird, worked closely with us during this last time when the governor had proposed 10% budget cuts for the schools, and we were able to work through that. However, when you're elected and go to the state senate, what do you foresee for schools funding, and what kind of policies would you help implement so that our funding for the school stays at least where it is? And we need substantially more, but obviously in this state, what do you see?
So yeah, and for people who may not be aware, there was a policy that was going forward that said there was going to be a 10% cut, but then a second part of that, because Mountain House was very impacted, and we're able to get some changes on that we didn't do the 10% cut. And also the idea was that we were going to hold people at the same level they were funded at last year, because we know there's not as many kids are going to be going back to school, but you still have to have teachers teaching and all the infrastructure in place. So we said, okay, the funding will be at what you had last year, so you wouldn't be going back. But then a community like Mountain House, which is one of the fastest growing school districts in the state, they had all this projected growth that they weren't going to be able to get funded for. So all these kids who were going to be starting at Mountain House weren't going to be able to start. So it was at the last minute, a special trailer bill to be able to fix that problem. And that was specifically, Mountain House was the example we used to be able to negotiate that deal. Going forward, though, we're going to continue to have challenges. And I sincerely hope we get our schools open back up as safe and as soon as we can. When we see the disparities that some of the private schools are starting to go back now, and we know it's because they're smaller and they can manage it better. But we also know that continues to set our kids who may have the greatest needs back even further. So I think, I don't mean to make a campaign pitch, but I do believe that I am the most experienced person who's going to be able to hit the ground running, because anybody who tells you, school board, city council, somebody running for the state senate, that this next couple of years aren't going to be difficult is not being honest with you. It's going to be difficult, and we're going to have to, make decisions. And I think we're going to really have to elevate things like education. And I don't even know if we want to talk about closing the achievement gap. It already existed, but I think it'll be exacerbated by what we've encountered. And that must be addressed. We cannot leave back a generation of kids, and we know that what that does to our society. And again, then we can talk more about homelessness and mental health and how those, right, if a kid's not reading well by third grade, the chances of them not doing well later on, ending up on the streets, unemployed, or perhaps in our prison system increases. So we need to be smart with our money and invest with it at the community level early on rather than paying for it later.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Susan, for your vision on that aspect. Definitely, you've covered the school side, you've covered the cities, and also when it comes to our public side. So with our businesses. So the next, going into that whole aspect of COVID and the environment that we're currently living on, if you look at public safety, it's really been strained in these months where they're doing multiple jobs, multiple aspects, and also just the environment, unfortunately, that's been going on in our whole nation, and also what we've faced here in California. What's your take on public safety, law enforcement, and some of the rhetoric that we may be seeing nationally, and how that is, happening in Sacramento and at the White House there?
Yeah, I think we're all kind of experiencing fatigue from this COVID lasting so long, and then the fires, and then the extreme heat. But in some respects, the most distressing part is the vitriol and it feels like the divisions that continue to grow between us. So I served on a city council, and I understand the importance of public safety. It's a very important component. I also, as a social worker, I also understand that our law enforcement professionals don't necessarily want to be and aren't necessarily the most appropriate people to be responding to issues around homelessness, around mental health issues, around domestic violence, a lot of issues around poverty that they get called out onto. So I've done two things, and the governor we had a Zoom bill signing ceremony today. So I had a Zoom earlier with the governor, but it wasn't as important as the Zoom we're doing now.
That's got to be a first.
Yeah.
Zoom bill signing.
He signed my bill, AB 1976, which will implement Laura's Law nationwide, or statewide, not nation. Again, this is California, for every county to have to be able to adopt mandatory outpatient treatment. If somebody has been in a psychiatric facility twice in the last 36 months, or they have done something violent a couple times, that they can then be mandated into assisted outpatient treatment, even as far as providing medications. I had another bill to deal with inpatient. I'm going to come back after that next year. But that's something that I think will hopefully get some of the really persistently and chronically mentally ill folks stabilized, so law enforcement's not getting called with issues like that. And then the other bill that I hope that's still on the governor's desk, I hope he signs that one soon. But people keep saying, we need social workers, not police. But what does that actually look like? So we did a policy, again, just to provide some structure for law enforcement agencies to be able to use it, that if they are then going to hire social workers, that those people then be supervised by somebody with a license, an LCSW or an MFT or something, to try to professionalize then what we're doing, because we don't want to just change a name from somebody from police officer to social worker. We want to make sure it's trained people so that it works. So I don't believe in an either or. I believe that we need to find ways to work together, and that we probably do need to have more mental health professionals on our streets, and that we need to do that side by side with law enforcement. And I think our country still is struggling with disparities. You see it in education, you see it in business, and those oftentimes are manifested in bad interactions between law enforcement and people of color. And so I think we need to acknowledge that, and know that we have work to do on all sides, but we don't do it by hollering at each other. We do it by hopefully trying to listen to each other and find good solutions to go forward, and not just stay in our corners and have positions, but actually come with some solutions that I hope I've done.
Yeah, and we are obviously much stronger united together.
Yeah. I agree. And thank you. And let's move on to, I want to talk about because agriculture and water for our counties, because you'll be representing obviously San Joaquin County and also Stan County, and water and agriculture is so important and such a main part of our agriculture here or our community here. What policies have you implemented as an assembly member, and what do you foresee to happen when you do go on to win the state senator election?
So I'm the chair of the Assembly Agriculture Committee, so I have been very involved in agriculture and the policy. So I am issues around water. Again, our farm workers and making sure people stay safe. There was just an outbreak in Foster Farms, and so I was involved with them. Like, we need to shut it down. We need to get people safe, and at the same time, how do we make it safe for people to go back to work? Because we also know that's over 3,000 jobs that's going on. So we have been then is also then passing with the COVID. On the issue of water, that is so. I am very proud. I was one of the authors of SB1. That was our water bond we did a few years ago, and I was the lead negotiator on the assembly side for Northern California and the Delta. And we made sure none of the money that was available for that went in towards the tunnels. The governor met with us, a bunch of the Delta legislators, when he first got in office, and we told him how we felt about the tunnels. And a couple of weeks later, he announced that the two-tunnel deal was off. Now we know he's going to come back with the single deal, and we're going to have to evaluate everything on its merit. Right? We know that we are part of. I heard somebody else on here saying we're not sending any water down south. Well, we are part of the California water system. There is a water system that runs from northern to southern California, and we sit in the middle of it. What we don't want to do is degrade our water for somebody else. That we need to stop having winners and losers and figure out ways, like with law enforcement issues, right? The same thing. How do we all win? So one of the ways that we do that, I think, is we don't have the two big massive tunnels. So that is off the table. The other issue further in Stanislaus County is the issue around flows and how much water can flow down. So the Stanislaus County farmers would like not to have any restriction on how much water they can take out before it comes down. Those of us on the Delta know that we need that water to come down, or else it backs up and it gets stagnant. So again, I think you need someone like me at the table who understands the complexity of water issues in California. Not that I'm an expert, because people have been doing this work for decades, but I have a pretty good idea of where the giant landmines are and which way the water flows. And so, we need to be able to sure we keep ours, and we need to find effective ways that water moves through the system that is California. We are the richest agriculture in the state, in the country, and certainly our region contributes to that, but we're not the only ones. I've had the opportunity to travel around the state and see, from forestry and strawberries way up when they start them in the Redding area to when they plant them down in Watsonville. We are one big massive system of a lot of parts. And so it is critically important to us and to our way of life.
Yeah, and definitely, water is such a precious resource, and we've seen that. And here it's the new gold. It's the gold rush.
Especially with the climate change and all.
Exactly. So the last thing we want to do is not have enough for our farmers locally here that do so much of the produce production for the nation.
For the nation.
So yes, definitely water is always important, and not just to farmers, but each and every individual that lives in the valley.
There's all kind of multiplier jobs that come from agriculture.
Correct. There's so many different jobs and so many people's livelihood that depends on water. 5-letter word that means so many things for us. So I'm going to transition now to another hot topic that is been an issue around the nation, here in our cities and everywhere else, and that's got to be homelessness. And, you know, homelessness is, I hope you have the magic answer, but I haven't found one yet either. But I do want you to talk about, you know, what is your vision on that, and how we can tackle homelessness from the state level down to the county level and also to the city level, because you have experience in all those aspects and you know what we are facing on the ground here.
Yeah. And Gary, from my time on the council, I quickly learned that homelessness is one thing everybody agrees is a problem and nobody agrees on the solution.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I learned. But I think we're moving closer to people agreeing that we must do something. So the issue has to be around wraparound services, because we know the people who are most chronically homeless are the ones who get the most press and are most visually apparent to us. And those folks oftentimes have coexisting issues of mental health issues or now like just bad health issues. So they need some kind of wraparound service. I have long been a proponent of moving services to the fairgrounds. I think we can also build affordable housing out there, because part of our issue, so that demographic, right? And so the bill I just talked about passing today hopefully will also really help with that. I have another one that I'll come back to again next year that deals with the inpatient component of that, and we need to have more resources and beds for inpatient. And I'm losing my charge, so I'm aware of that too. I hope I don't. If I go black, that's what happened.
We'll fill in for you.
Okay. So we need to do a lot more, right? And we have freed up some hotels. The fairground is now freed up, but we need the funding to continue to come. We need to build more housing. I have been a big proponent of being able to retrofit. I had a bill last year, retrofit hotels and motels, strip malls into affordable housing. We need to be able to find ways to increase our housing stock, and that letting people build mother-in-laws in the back, and all kinds of different ways I think we can, because we know how expensive it is to do big affordable housing projects. We need to find, I think, as many ways as we can to insert housing everywhere into the community in places that it already exists. Like I think we're going to see a lot of empty office buildings and strip malls because we're all changing how we do business. How many of those could be then made into some kind of housing for people to be able to use? So it is wraparound services for those who are severely mentally ill and homeless, and then for those others, I think you need supportive housing to help people get on the path, and you need housing for them to be able to move into.
And Susan, we thank you so very much for coming here today on our show and talking to our audience and giving us a full 30 minutes of a little bit of overview. And I'm sure on your website we can learn a little bit more about you as well.
That's right. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.